Now turning to Dalia and to other security issues in the region, we've seen growing tensions between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan concerning the Renaissance Dam. We've seen U.S. efforts to mediate, going back from direct brokering mediation during the Trump administration, now with the appointment of a special envoy who's been criticized for being insufficient on this front. And we've also seen internal tensions in Ethiopia with Eritrean forces lending assistance with the internal crisis. Ethiopia lacks on electricity, but does have some oil, which is very rarely talked about. How do these issues figure into the security situation in the region? What are the likely outcomes in the near future? What can be done to moderate and to de-escalate the crisis?
Thank you, Irina. I'm really happy to be with you all here. So I will start by a piece of news that came out earlier today that is very much related to what I'm going to talk about. The piece of news is about Egypt signing yet another defense agreement with another important African country, which is Kenya. Since the beginning of this year, or actually since December last year, Egypt has been actively reaching out to African countries and making partnerships on trade level and on military level in an attempt to contain and deter Ethiopia from continuing to fill the dam, which is a threat to our national security because of its influence on our share in the Nile River. So actually, this takes us to the main point here, which is the fact that, or what, the thinkers and people studying international relationships has been warning about for years, which is the war over water. But what we're seeing today actually is that there is a war over water, and maybe Egypt case is an excellent example on this. Egypt is involved in two, we won't say war, but two conflicts related to water, both in the Mediterranean and in along the Nile River at the same time, at the same moment, which is a good example to this concept of having a war over water. But if you look at the essence of why these conflicts are happening, it's actually because of the hydro energy that could be provided through these basins of the Mediterranean or the Nile River. For example, all the problems we have seen recently, all the troubles that we have seen recently happening in the Mediterranean, which was a relatively quiet basin for so long, especially the militarization of the foreign policy of that was adopted by Turkey, which actually turned this basin last summer into a zone of war. Or almost like a zone of war, was mainly because of the gas discoveries, the natural gas discoveries that enabled Egypt to rise within the last 3 years or so as an energy hub, not only for North Africa or the Middle East region, but also for the entire Mediterranean region, including the Southern European countries. At the same time, Egypt was able also to act as an electricity hub in the region because of its use of renewable energy resources, which enabled Egypt to have a surplus of 20,000 megawatt. And now Egypt is actually aiming to reach to the point of 40% surplus above its needs by 2035, which means Egypt will be able to export this electricity to other countries, including African countries. And in the year 2019, I think in December, the Egyptian president has already offered to export electricity to other African countries, again, in an attempt to help Africa develop and help the African countries develop. But most importantly, to contain the conflict that was rising around the Nile River because of Ethiopia continuing with building the dam. the dangerous part about these conflicts actually is that they are not being resolved through diplomacy. There has been attempts for long years, sometimes decades, like in the case of the conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan and Ethiopia over the building of the Renaissance Dam. So what's happening now is that most countries, and also in addition to this, the conflict between Greece and Cyprus and Turkey in the Mediterranean. The problem is that diplomacy is not working anymore. So these countries are resorting to mobilizing their military powers against each other. We have seen this happening in the Mediterranean last year. Greece and Cyprus, which were not mostly interested in military procurement and arms procurement, are now buying arms from everywhere. The same thing is happening even in some North African countries as well, including Tunisia and Morocco. So this arm race is very dangerous. And the fact that rather than solving our conflicts over water or hydro energy through diplomacy, now we are resorting to military power. And actually some people even expected that maybe the conflict between Ethiopia and Egypt may rise some kind of war, even if it's not like direct clashes between the military of Egypt and the military of Ethiopia, but there will be some kind of war that will be happening, some kind of violence that will be happening, and this will be disastrous to the entire region. So it's very important to find a proper diplomatic means to get this resolved. And I think the best country or the best mediator to handle all this is the United States. Recently, we have been hearing, or actually before the immediate, the recent crisis that took place between the Israelis and Palestinians, there were talks that the United States is not interested in the Middle East anymore, or not interested in our region anymore, and will be more busy with China and other conflicts. But actually, the recent crisis that happened just next door of Egypt proved that there must be a more effective role to the United States in the region. And I think it's very important for the United States also to mediate in these rising conflicts around water and around hydro energy resources in these waters, especially in the Mediterranean and the Nile River. So thank you, and I look forward to the questions.
Speaking of destabilizing activity, I wanted to go back to Dalia and discuss a little bit more the whole issue with Ethiopia, and more focus on some of the intransigence we have seen concerning even creative solutions proposed by Egypt and other actors. We know Saudi Arabia offered to mediate, they've offered to invest more heavily in Ethiopia. They have invested heavily in the past, although admittedly not so much in the energy sector. We are seeing Ethiopia dealing with an internal crisis, which the government is not managing very well. And we've also seen some sort of a background backing by state actors, which have invested into keeping Ethiopia less flexible towards Egypt and Sudan, particularly after the change in government in Sudan. We are seeing all sorts of security issues. We are seeing border issues, skirmishes with Sudan. We are seeing internal human rights crisis concerning the conflict with in the Tigray region. How much of it is really being done? Just how much of the GERD crisis is sort of a populist attempt to kind of distract from the other longer term issues that Ethiopia is dealing with? Is there a viable alternative to GERD altogether? Was there a reason why Ethiopia solicited so much money from the population to invest into that project, as opposed to considering solutions such as having different sources, more diverse sources for to fuel electricity? To me, there seems to be something is not adding up in terms of how the situation is being handled as if this is the only way to generate electricity, which, as we know from everything happening in the region, it is not. We're seeing electrification going on in other parts of East Africa and other parts of the, in North Africa. So what's going on there? Why is there this obsession with pursuing that particular route that is inevitably leading to conflicts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Irina, for the important question. But to let me start by summarizing how the Ethiopians are thinking about the GERD issue. The thing actually is that it works on two levels. One is what they are selling to the public, what they are saying to the public. They are telling them that this dam is going to provide you with the electricity you need. Actually, it's a fact that Ethiopia does not have proper infrastructure for supplying electricity to areas that are far from the capital. So about 60% of the population there are deprived from electricity, which is a big crisis, a big problem, and we understand this. And to solve this problem, they are telling the people, we have to build this dam and put all the money in it to solve your energy problems. Actually, Egypt offered to solve this problem. Egypt has a surplus in electricity. It is already exporting electricity to Libya and to Jordan. And there is a plan to start exporting electricity to Saudi Arabia by 2022, next year, actually. And also we are about to export to other places in Africa, including Central Africa and East Africa. So it would be easy for us to export, easy for Egypt, I mean, to export the electricity to Sudan and from Sudan to Ethiopia. But there are two things that are standing in the way. The security situation, of course, as you know, this area is full of terrorists and all of many troubles and many regional conflicts and territorial conflicts as well. And the other thing is the lack of infrastructure. And this also Egypt has offered, actually the Egyptian president himself has offered to help with building building a proper infrastructure through which we can supply electricity in half price to Ethiopia. But they refused. Why? Because of the second dimension, which is the political dimension that is related to the elections that was supposed to happen next month in June and now is postponed to August. Actually, the politicians there, they found, this concept of creating some kind of an enemy so you keep people attached to you. This is what they're doing with their people, like challenging Egypt and representing Egypt as someone who wants to trespass their rights, who wants to steal their water. And in the past few months, some crazy idea came up that was also spread all over the Ethiopian media. I don't know how they come up with it, actually. They say that, like the case with the Gulf countries, they find the oil in their lands and they get this oil out and they sell to the world and they become rich. So they thought that, well, Ethiopia is where the Nile starts. So they can actually keep the water there and then sell the water to others who want it. It's completely against all agreements, all international laws, against everything. But unfortunately, they sold this lie to their people so it can serve the interests of the political elite. So now to solve this problem, and actually even the other problems that are happening in the Mediterranean, and so there must be a mediation for sure, either on the regional level or on the international level by the United States or actually not or, it's only the United States on the international level or also on the regional level. We have already in Egypt approached 3 key players to help us mediate with the Ethiopians, and these 3 key players are the main, are the top 3 investors in the national capital of Ethiopia. They are China, number 1, Saudi Arabia, number 2, and Turkey, number 3, and for Turkey, actually, they are the ones who offered to help. And Egypt, up till this moment, has not responded because, there is a history of tension that is now somehow in the process of being resolved. So for China, it was not possible because China is having a similar problem where it played the role of Ethiopia. In its regional context, I mean, so it cannot intervene because it will be embarrassing for it. For Saudi Arabia offered and they said they will intervene, and even the United Arab Emirates offered to help, and they have already intervened several times since 2015. But unfortunately, the Ethiopians are insisting on not answering any of these calls. They sat with the Egyptians, they sat with the Sudanese for negotiations. They say okay and everything, and once they leave the room, nothing happens. And this is the problem. This is the problem. There must be a way to force them to commit to what they have agreed on on the negotiation table. Other African countries have tried to intervene, but unfortunately, this is not also happening. So maybe the United Nations could be a place to go. Regional players should be helping us with this. Today also, actually, President El-Sisi discussed with Secretary Blinken the GERD issue, the dam issue. And until this moment, unfortunately, I can sense that the United States is still not willing to properly get involved in this conflict. But believe me, it's very, very important to resolve that. On the other hand, I think it's very important in general, meaning the water conflicts in general, either in the Mediterranean or on the Nile River or in other places. It's time, I think, to review all the agreements that were signed many decades ago. Some of them are over a century ago, and they are the reason for most of the conflicts that are happening today. This includes the 1902 treaty or agreement that was signed under the British occupation and is now the reason for this conflict over the Nile River. And another agreement that was signed in 1922 under the fog of war, the Lausanne Agreement, which is now the main reason for the conflict in the Mediterranean. So I think it's time for the United Nations and other international concerned bodies to work on bring the conflicting parties and look back into these agreements and perhaps write new ones that fit the new age we are living in.
To follow up on what you just said, in terms of US interventions in this matter, we have seen two different approaches. With the Trump administration, there was the direct talks, which did not go anywhere, and Ethiopia had walked out on them, I think, on more than one occasion even. And I believe these issues concerning the offers to provide electricity, the offers to invest in other projects, they were probably mentioned in some capacity, but received no response. This administration has sent Envoy Feldman, but to speak with each actor separately. He's visited with the refugees, with the Ethiopian and Eritrean refugees. It's unclear whether there was any outcome from these visits other than just hearing everybody's perspectives. And the other issue is, given the context of Egypt pursuing very active diplomacy with Somalia, with Kenya, with various other countries, what is the possibility for widening the discussion to neighboring countries which would also be affected both by a water crisis and by humanitarian crisis in the event of the final fallout, rather than keeping it focused exclusively on Ethiopia and giving it so much power in the decision-making process?
Yeah, okay, that's a very good question, and I think for getting other countries involved, especially in Africa, I think Egypt has been doing a very good work in the past few months on this. We have been reaching to about 9 countries so far. Our foreign minister have been doing a tour in 9 countries in East Africa. I believe in March or February. During this time, we made defense agreements with Sudan, Eritrea, and today with Kenya and other countries that are concerned with the issue and that will be directly or indirectly affected with what's going on. And if, God forbid, some kind of war happened between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. Also, we have been enhancing our relationship with Sudan on many levels, which I think also will be beneficial not only to the East Africa conflict that's going on now, but also for the Middle East region and for the North Africa region. Sudan is very central and very important for the security and also the trade movement of this region, as we were just discussing with my colleagues here. But the problem with Africa is somehow similar to the problem with the Middle East. When we look at Africa, we believe that, and the same thing for the Middle East, we believe like all the countries in the Middle East are one thing, or they can be bought in one boat and sail together. Actually, this is not true. They have different interests and diverse mindsets and even diverse styles of living. So it's very difficult to bring them together as one package or to look at them together as one package. The same thing is in Africa. Even in East Africa, if we are focusing here, these countries also are very different, very diverse. They even speak different languages. So it's very important also to look on the issue from that perspective, which will make us focus more on the economic part, which could be a good way to link all of them together by first helping improving development in these countries. International influencers or key players could help with the issue of infrastructure building. For example, I know the United States is making huge investments in Ethiopia for food supplies and health investments. Why this is not invested? Why the US and other European countries does not invest in building the infrastructure of these countries so countries like Egypt can provide them with electricity, make trade with them, and so on. So it's maybe the economic side of the issue may be a solution to the crisis that is going, and also a way to somehow turn down the tone of crazy armament race that's happening now in our region.
Almost like the Abraham Accords of Africa, but with respect to this issue, I would say. That's
great. Yeah, that's a very good concept.